This is EdTech People, a podcast where we get to meet those working in EdTech, exploring their journeys, roles and insights. You can catch up on our previous episodes at any time by searching for us wherever you get your podcasts or visiting our website at www.edtechpeople.co.uk. We're always on the lookout for guests, so if you're interested in coming on the podcast, please follow the link on our website and let us know. Welcome to another episode of EdTech People. This time I'm joined by Carl Curless of the Endeavour Learning Trust, where he's the head of data and analytics. Carl, great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, great to be a part of it, Matt. Thank you.
So tell me a bit, if you can, what you do working in EdTech, what's your role and what do you do day to day?
Yeah, so pretty much my role is making data live within the trust. So that was sort of the remit that the chief exec sort of wanted when I met him for the first time. So sort of a lot of what I do is working on dashboards using Power BI. We get a lot of our data from our main management information system, Arbor. So a lot of our sort of dashboards are sort of formed from there, but we also have data that comes in from third-party products such as SMAID, Access HR is our HR system. We also have manual Excel sheets that are shared via OneDrive, and we pull in that information. So the main sort of day-to-day is supporting our 9 schools with the sort of the live data system that we're currently building and developing and trying to get better. And yeah, just sort of trying to be as supportive as best we can. I mean, things like timetable issues come up and staff move on and we have to jump in and support and things like that. Or it could be looking at New Year 7 admissions set up and trying to get that process up and running, getting new admission applications and recording them and things like that. It really is sort of varied and sort of, I guess I never know what's going to come up each day, which is a good part of the role, I think.
Yeah, it's good for any job when you get in every day and do something a little bit different. So I'm really interested to dive into this role because I think this is a role that's evolved as part of the industry and with the evolution of multi-academy trusts that have come along, and they're now at the scale where these roles aren't just secondary. That are, and are providing real insights for leadership and in the classroom to make sure that everybody's getting the data that they need to personalize that learning. So is your trust primary, secondary?
We're both. We have 5 primaries currently, 4 secondaries that have a 6th form. We're soon to be 10. We have another school, another primary, like a junior school that's in the pipeline. So yeah, we've grown quite a bit in the past sort of 16 months or so that I've been with the trust. We started off with 6. So yeah, it really is a mixed bag, and I suppose we have to tailor, our support in that. You've got secondary schools who have data managers who predominantly would have worked with Sims, and they're having to work with Arbor and upskill themselves, but they aren't really using Power BI as such, and that's something I do want to try and help and drive on. But I suppose an issue that we currently have is licensing. We only have 80 licenses across our schools, and part of sort of conversation that I have with our head of IT is moving our Microsoft sort of tenancy to cloud, and then we can start hopefully getting A3 licenses and A5 licenses rather than just paying for bespoke licenses that we've got currently.
Yeah, so it sounds like an exciting and evolving picture then, and obviously adoption of Arbor is really good to hear as a cloud MIS, and that might move from Sims to Arbor. How long have you been with a cloud MIS in Arbor? Has it been there since you started, or?
No. So it's a funny story actually. The first sort of conversation I had with David, the chief exec, was, when does our Sims contract end? because I'd come from Star Academies and they had just started the procurement process, looking at providers, Bromcom, Iris, Arbor, and it was something that I felt the trust needed to do, particularly to sort of being able to get at the data, because whilst the schools at Endeavour had Sims and class charts, which was like a bolt-on product, it was difficult to get out the data from class charts, and the cost of that as well sort of made it where I made it sort of an objective then that we needed to really look at. And luckily, David, the chief executive, and the trustees were supportive of that view. So we ended up doing a procurement within the first few months of me starting, which I hadn't planned. My initial plan was just to get a dashboard, an attendance dashboard, or something that, because that was one thing I'd been told, was that it takes weeks to get attendance data, and it's not live. So I'd set out to do that, but at the same time, when I realised that the contract was due to end and we were in a position where we had to sort of move or sign another rolling 3-year contract with Sims, which is what they'd moved their model to. So that sort of forced our hand a little bit. So then obviously having to get the schools on board with that and try and convince them of this was a good way forward, when they were, to be honest, probably happy with class charts. If you ask a lot of the staff, they would have been fine with sticking to what we had. But from a central mapped data perspective, to me, it was really important that we went with a cloud-based MIS, which had a connector, BI connector, or something that I could sort of tap into in the background, and that's obviously where we've moved to.
So it's a really interesting point in terms of that change for the end users as well, because there is a real need to get the data out and to make that data useful, and the staff perhaps don't realise the difficulty in getting that data out, and certainly what you can then do with that data. Well, they're focused on that front end that they're using every day to put the data in, whereas you really need to consider, it's okay making it easy for people to put it in, but if you can't get it out in a usable format, then it makes it kind of a waste of time. I know class charts. I've been in schools where they use it as well, and it is, solves some problems. It's an easy interface, but you're absolutely right. Then getting the data out is the issue. So you moved to Arbor across your schools, and Arbor has a lot of built-in reporting. What
Yeah.
was the need from yourselves, did you feel, to be able to pull that data out into something like Power BI? What was the benefits for you from that, rather than just using the built-in reporting in Arbor?
Just having the connector, Matt, having the BI connector means that all the tables are there for you. So previously it was command reporter, the scripts, which would then pull out the raw CSVs from Sims, attendance, behaviour, suspensions, context, all in files, and then another script to combine them all together, then feed into Power BI. But then often it wouldn't refresh, or it would break, or certain reports wouldn't run. So it was very clunky, and and I'd experienced it at Star as well. And it would be where certain schools that had were on a certain server, or had maxed out space on the sort of the servers, then would struggle. By the time you got the end of the term, the data wouldn't come out. So it was just a real struggle. So having the BI connector has just solved all the problems, essentially. Like class charts, I'd spoken to them and asked, can we get data out easily, detentions, because we couldn't get that out of, it was recorded in class charts, it didn't go back to Sims. So
Yeah.
that was an issue. So I couldn't give the schools any detentions data, any behaviour dashboard, internal exclusions, things like that wouldn't sync back into Sims. I couldn't get. So having that, and plus everything else that's within the connector, like the DFE tables, so we've got live national tables now that I can pull from for both attendance. You've got suspensions, you've got the IDACHI, so we can get deprivation data in there, so we can make visuals like that. Yeah, it's just having everything there and using Snowflake to just bring in the tables that we need. It's just been game changing for us. It's cut out such a critical, long-winded part of scripts and and all everything else that we'd done previously using sort of the back end of Sims.
And so when you've got that data now and you're able to use it to compare and contrast across the trust or nationally, what has been the impact in the schools? Well, if somebody was asking you to justify why you've done it and why that's worth the investment, what would your answer be?
So the sort of the big thing that our trust always looks at, alongside comparisons to national, is last academic year.
Yeah.
So just having a data set that you can look back on and just have a side by side visual of, right, this is attendance this year, this is attendance last year, and just having that looking back, and for schools to be able to see, are we improving on last year, because sometimes you can't always compare to national because of your context of your school. You might always struggle to sort of get to the national average. So then for us as a school, we always want to be showing that we've improved year on year. So I'd say that that's been the biggest thing, in that we can compare, not just against national easily now with the sort of the live tables that we get, but just by easily. Whereas probably before, we'd have had to just export it out and have like a fixed table of statistics that we would call upon, which again would involve archiving and then re-bringing it back in, and just difficult from a sort of a data modelling viewpoint. Just having those tables and that data just there from. You could go back even further if you wanted to show a historical trend. We can go back to 21, 22. Before pre-COVID. We've got that option. We don't do that, but it is good to be able to do that if we're ever asked. I suppose if I don't know, that was a question from trustees or Ofsted, we can go back that far.
And in terms of the staff and reaction to it, are they coming to you now that they've seen what's the potential there and asking for more in-depth data, or do they still rely a lot on you showcasing from a trust level, like what you want to highlight, or is there a growing awareness of people being able to say, "Oh no, I'd really like to see this. Can you pull this for me and show me it against whatever?"
Yeah, I think for senior leaders, I would say they are getting more in terms of like extracurriculars, something now that we're starting to look at a bit more closely. So we're getting some of our secondaries really wanting to sort of get some decent analysis from that. So we're doing a piece of work to try and get that set up first within Arbor, and getting staff to record attendance of clubs and activities, and then we can showcase, well, right, this is what it looks like in the dashboards, and then we'll develop it how you want it. So it's not a case of we'll just come up with a dashboard and say, there you go, that's off. It's done very much in collaboration with staff who would use it and sort of ask for certain things, and we'll always go away and try and improve it and make it so that it's usable. In terms of teaching staff, yes, I think in terms of they've certainly got access to a lot more information, although, as you said, class charts was a very good interface. In terms of information, it was probably quite limited in that they would have to go into Sims if they wanted to get contact details or send, or use a different platform for sending messages to parents. So they've definitely got more capabilities in terms of access to student data. The reports, obviously, that you can set up and schedule, I think that's definitely a positive, in that you're not having to sort of keep going in to run report like you would do in Sims, and having the schedule reports sent by email or a notification definitely come in handy as well. So yeah, I'd say there's probably a shift in that, and I'm hoping we're sort of, how far are we at? It was 12 months ago since we signed the contract, so we're still within that bedding in period and getting staff used to it. But my hope is that we can start to really showcase a lot of the good features that the system has, like the AI features. The suggest student summary is really good, particularly for primary school staff, where they have to do like an all about me section in the parent reports. They can pretty much get that from suggest student summary. We're starting to look at the auto absence feature as well in Arbor, where it transcribes the voicemails left by parents reporting the child is absent. So we're trialing that for a couple of schools. So I'm very much trying to sort of get certain features and showcase them and get staff really on board with it. And my hope is that in the next 12 months, they'll be saying, well, what was class charts? Class charts, forget that. But that, I think that's the thing at the moment. It's still, staff are still probably trying to get used to the day-to-day, taking registers, doing seating plans, logging behaviours, logging achievements and things like that. And it's, I suppose, from a class teacher's perspective, they just want to do stuff really, really quickly and easily. And that's, I suppose, what we're trying to sort of do alongside other things as well.
Yeah, because a lot of those things that they're experiencing are brand new for them, and even though they're in the package and they've been around there for a long time, they won't have been in Sims. They might have been in add-ons like class charts, as you say, or ePraise or other systems, but having them all built in is really powerful. So do you see a lot of people using it more because they can access it wherever they are now? So being able to access Arbor from home or another location, it's got to be good for them to be able to get that context and data wherever they are and make that data more usable, hasn't it?
Exactly, yeah. So if you think prior to COVID or before remote learning was, you couldn't access Sims pretty much at all off-site. It was only certain staff. I remember I worked in a school and I was able to do it, but I had to sort of go through hoops to get on to access to a remote server where I could then get onto Sims and do work at home. But for the vast majority of staff, they couldn't access it at all. And whilst they probably could have accessed class charts and things like that, but I'm thinking more like mark sheets. I'm thinking exams, timetables, things where teaching staff may prefer to sit at home and do. And I suppose, again, if you're thinking more of flexible working and secondaries and certain trusts trying to give staff that ability to take the PPA at home, by having systems that allow easy access at home, I think sort of falls nicely in with that sort of that strategy or that approach of giving staff that flexibility. I mean, you can access it, on a mobile device as well. So if you're out and about and I don't know, you're on a trip and you wanted to sort of quickly get up allergies or medical conditions or a register of that trip, then staff could easily do that without having to print off paper copies of registers, allergy information like they would probably, have done historically.
Yeah, it opens up a whole new world, doesn't it, really? And one of the things that I think is often not understood across schools is the level of information that they get in an MIS. Both being able to look at individual level, tutor, year group, and whole school, and as you mentioned before, past data. So having access to that more readily, I think, as you rightly say, allows them to be able to do different, more in-depth things about it with it when they've got the time to do it. So if they've got that time in the PPA or, as you say, at home to go and delve into it a little bit more, then they're able to explore it and perhaps use that more frequently than what they could when it was hidden in the system that they'd only log into to take the registers, and then only senior leaders would do it. Sorry to interrupt the podcast, and we'll jump back in shortly, but I want to introduce the sponsors who make EdTech People possible. All are recognisable brands to anyone working in EdTech. Smoothall need no introduction to those working in schools, with 1 in 3 in the UK using their internet filtering, which provides real-time filtering wherever a user is and on any device. They also provide Smoothall Monitor, which is an essential safeguarding solution which allows monitoring of devices and captures for schools. You can find out more about Smoothall Filter and Smoothall Monitor and the other advice and support they've got available at smoothall.com. Next up, Secure Schools are an education-only cybersecurity team working to help schools understand the security within their schools and, crucially, provide support and training for those working within the school or trust. Recently, they have released their free Cyber School tool, allowing schools to assess their cybersecurity easily by answering key questions and getting a dashboard with all their results. Find out more by visiting their website at secureschools.com. First Pillar provide extensive support to schools in a wide range of areas. Their founder, Emma Gray, is an experienced school business leader who now works to support schools in all their operational needs, leaving them to focus on educating. You can see all the services that Emma offers at First Pillar and some great blog posts by visiting her website at firstpillar.co.uk.
Hello listeners of EdTech People, I'm Craig. When I worked in a school, I noticed how challenging it was for teachers to find and reserve shared spaces. That's why I created Classroom Bookings, an easy-to-use online room booking system. With Classroom Bookings, staff can reserve rooms at any time from anywhere. Designed for schools of all sizes, it supports multi-week timetables and flexible period times. Plus, the cloud service is priced at just £149 per year with no limit on the number of rooms or users. Try it free today or find out more at classroombookings.com.
For me, one of the things that these new, well, not new, but cloud MISs are enabling is context-aware data, so it knows who you are, where you are, what you're doing, but then allowing people to delve into that data wherever they are, and you know, even as you say, going on trips and such are there. Just jumping back a little bit where you mentioned around AI, because obviously that's a big buzzword across everything these days. Arbor, I've always celebrated of being some people that are actually using it for something that's helpful in education and something that can, you know, be an immediate impact. So you mentioned about them being able to record down voice messages from parents for absences and to help do reports. These are two things that are going to make a real impact for staff straight away, isn't it? You know, that being able to use AI to take away that burden. Do you think we can see
Absolutely.
more of that coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the good. I think when we sort of looked at the systems, I liked both Bromcom and Arbor. Star Academies, where I came from, they decided to go with Bromcom. They felt that the assessment system was a little bit more suited to their needs. And unfortunately for us, when sort of Bromcom were demonstrating it, they couldn't show the AI features because it was being blocked by the school's Wi-Fi system. And in the end, I think I'd said to the staff, I just want you to tell me what system you want. And I literally went off the most votes. But for me, I very much like both systems. But in the end, I think we felt that Arbor had a bit more of a sort of more user-friendly interface, and with the AI features that we were shown, we felt that that was a journey that we wanted to sort of be on, particularly when they showed things like suggest text and emails and things. And this was just sort of like some of the basic stuff. The suggest student summary hadn't really, that's only a very recent thing. The auto absence, although it had been spoken about, we hadn't really seen an example of. So yeah, and there's other things as well that I've seen, which is like the canvas. So it's pretty much like, again, creates a similar dashboard effect, and it can pull in information from within the system to sort of present like a mini dashboard within Arbor. There's just lots of other features that I think will continue to come through the system and very much save staff time, which is a big driver for me personally, but also for Arbor. And I think our values definitely align in that respect. So yeah, very much. And obviously there's Stephen, the head of AI at Arbor. I think he's doing a great job, and they're bringing through lots and lots of new features. That being said, this Arbor system does an awful lot. You could pretty much have everything within Arbor, and there are some things that probably do need a little bit tweaking and to sort of deal with the grumbles that the teaching staff, the day in day out staff might have, particularly around homework assignments, parents' evenings, things like that, which do are a sort of key tasks that have to be done at certain points in the year and can be a bit tricky and not as probably good. So my hope is that whilst the AI stuff is continuing to be developed, that they also listen and continue to develop the little technical little glitches that I think staff complain about. Well, to me anyway.
I'm sure they complain about them to Arbor as well. It's when I was within a trust, we went from Sims to Bromcom, which was weird at the time because we was an Arbor accredited support unit, their IT support, so it was a bit weird. Like you, Arbor is somebody that I really align value wise with, and the people that I've known there. We've had Beth was our second ever podcast guest and still one of the highest rated ones, and she's working high up in Arbor these days and work with Holly on a partnership level through Consero. There's both platforms are immensely powerful and such a huge step forward from what's been in the past, and it's great to see that there's other platforms coming alongside these now and being welcomed to have a little bit of competition there, because we have gone from a world dominated by Sims. I think they were up to 93-94%, if not higher, of my market share, now down to 40. Oh yeah, down to something like 40 odd percent at the moment these days, from various data points. How big a impact has the demise of Sims been in education, do you think?
It's hard really, because I've always been pro Sims. I mean, I started out using Sims in 2013 at Wigan, where I'm from. So the local authority, all of the schools had Sims, and I remember going to the conferences in Alton Towers, and it was all very. Yeah, there's always lots of support units. It was all great times and 80% market share. But probably what they didn't do was appreciate, I suppose, the cloud based. There was always talk of a cloud based system. I remember Sims 8 was spoken about a lot, but nothing ever seemed to get off the ground with it. And I think as time went on, and like Bromcom, Arbor continued to grow and pull in schools, and I remember some of our schools that moved to Arbor at the time and thinking, wow, that's quite a bold move there, and because I knew Sims did everything, and at the time I think Arbor was very much a primary based system, so there was no timetable of facility, no exams, very much not fit for secondaries. But that quickly changed, and yeah, I think with Sims having the dominance, I think it just didn't really open up much scope for development, and they probably didn't appreciate the sort of the impact of very quickly Arbor then grew and then captured schools. And it was all, for me, it was more when I moved to Star, it was then working with data in large volumes, and particularly attendance. So that table would have millions of rows, 10 million rows of a year's worth of attendance, and just in terms of the back end and getting the information out, and how sluggish it was, and we were still using Command Reporter and things like that. That sort of hit it home to me, in that, God, there must be something better than this. I think I'd say it quite often to my colleagues, there's got to be something better than this. And eventually the powers that be at Star listened, because they were very pro Sims. They were, they'd used Sims for years. They knew it inside out. They could build any reports, assessment templates. They could do a timetable. They could do anything in it. But when they listened at event, then I think in Stars, obviously at the time, 30 odd schools. It was a big procurement, but one that they felt would really benefit them, and then that was a sort of the change in my own mindset, in that there is a different way out there in terms of a cloud-based MIS.
Yeah, I think it's there would be no Arbor and Bromcom in their current form if it wasn't for Sims,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
that that without Sims being that dominant secure base, you wouldn't necessarily know where to start. And I always have, whenever I'm looking at Bromcom and Arbor, it's always a school's decision. It's not something that I'd go and sell one or the other. I'm always very much, you need to make this decision for yourselves and based on what your needs are. But I think there's always been a thing where Arbor have been more radical
Yeah,
in terms of how they've designed it. They haven't gone for a web-based version of Sims. They've gone for a very different type of way of doing things, which has got its plus points for sure. But in terms of cajoling people over from Sims into it, makes it a little bit more difficult to
yeah,
achieve. Bromcom it's clearly taken what Sims did and has
yeah,
modernized that and put that into the web space, and it's also put into taken a lot of the secondary features from Sims and put them in there a lot earlier than what Arbor did. But I think, yeah, both of them owe the heritage to Sims, and I think for Sims it was a real difficult place for them because they had the market share, they had the product. There was no need for them necessarily to move that quickly and to, without looking into the future. But I do think they've always been at a disadvantage because migrating 90+% of schools into a new system is never going to be an easy task, and it's such a seismic change. The technologies between Sims on-prem and Arbor are millennials apart. There is no comparison for them. You just talked about accessing that data from BI and the difficulties in doing that from Sims, and then the ease of doing it within Arbor. And that's because Arbor and Bromcom and the other packages have been built from the ground up with the thought of, we need to make sure that this data is effective to get out of here and easy to use. So yeah, it's a very exciting time seeing how they're both raising and developing. And jumping back to a point that you made earlier on, I do think one of the criticisms of these systems is when they try to be a bit of everything. One of the nice things that happened with Sims was that evolution of all the add-ins on it. So your Sims effectively would be the database, and you could have everything running into that database from these different systems. And so some of those products were fantastic, some were terrible, but some were really, really good systems and add-ons on there, which obviously you don't necessarily need if you've got a platform like Arbor and Bromcom. One of the ones that I always highlight to school is around the safeguarding login.
yeah,
When we moved to Bromcom, it just wasn't there. It wasn't as
yeah.
feature packed as My Concern and CPOMs, and
People.
that's because that's all they do, and
Yeah,
so they do it very, very well. And I don't know about, but it all comes back to that conversation that you're talking about, is having data in multiple different systems makes it very difficult then to pull that information out and to use it contextually around the data that is sitting in your MIS. So essentially, they need to sort these out, these areas, but then there's this real worry that it's going to kill all these other great products that are around there if they're not assumed into it, really, isn't it? So that's kind of
yeah,
like a bit of a problematic view, certainly.
yeah. I think Class Charts, they are trying to develop their own MIS system
Yeah, it's the
because
only way forward for them, really, I think.
they know that they will lose schools. So then when we first moved to Arbor, we said, well, we'll keep Class Charts initially because Arbor didn't have a student app, and we didn't want to cause disruption for parents from day one. We really wanted to but then we hit problems of data not syncing correctly. So like positive incidents would be recorded as negative incidents in
Oh,
Arbor, or the other way around. And then so you get parents then contacting the school and complaining. So we very quickly had to sort of make a decision in that this isn't working for us. We've been told that the data would sync, but whilst it did, it wasn't in the correct format. So we had to quickly sort of move away from that. And also, we currently use a system called Provision Map, which is for send, and we kept that, and because it works very well, and the Senkos can easily create passports and you link all the provisions that the students have all in one place. And I think Arbor doesn't quite have that yet. You can record provisions in Arbor, but you can't generate pupil passports very easily from it. So there are things that the schools have used, and we've continued with that, and we're still doing so. CPOMs being one. I did ask the head of safeguarding, would you consider using Bromcom and setting up and having, but she was adamant no. She was like, nope. She spent, pretty much all of her time, quite rightly, getting the right categories and getting staff trained and using it properly. For me to then go, right, let's get it all in Bromcom, it was just a non-starter. So, and I completely respected, the decision around that. But at the time, you're just thinking, we can save money, we can bring everything in one place, but whilst that is good, it's not necessarily the best thing as well, because as you say, it's about what's best for the schools, and I have to listen sometimes. And whilst we go get some parents who say, I will pay you money if you bring back Class Charts app.
Really?
But, it's like, we're not going to do that. But, this is, unfortunately, as I've said to people, you can't please everybody.
No.
Have to do, and my hope is that as time moves on and I can give back data in the form of dashboards or as live and is in a nice readable format, then they'll start to sort of understand, right, yeah, this was why, and it makes sense now why that change had to happen.
It's an interesting one, because my daughter goes to a school where they switched to Arbor in the last 12 months, and I was like, finally, I've got access to an app, and I can see that information. I'm a non-resident parent, so I don't see my daughter every day, so it's really important for me to access that data. Do you know, I speak to her every single day on the phone when she's walking into school, so I get all the updates on there to do it. But it's been so nice being able to have that insight into her school day and what she's doing, and obviously, being able to celebrate the successes with her through that. And it is such an important element that actually loads of schools still aren't taken advantage of, isn't it? I mean, they're I don't know when you're on board in schools whether they're like, wow, you're really opening up these opportunities. That's perhaps why they're in part why they're considering joining a multi-academy for that scale and established systems, and having people like yourself in post that can help those systems, be rolled out and be used, which they wouldn't necessarily be able to do on their own.
Yeah, that's it. I speak for us. Probably what had happened historically in the trust is that the schools had gone away and got sort of their own third-party apps. So we had a mixture, and we still have. We've still got some schools on legacy apps, which, again, they're very wedded to, and they're very nervous about moving, particularly the primaries, the smaller primaries that we've got. And these things got School Grid for the meal ordering, and they've got School Spider, and they love it, and all they can, every time they see me when I come in, is, we're not changing School Spider, are we? It's the first thing that they said. I'm sort of like, well, not at the moment, no, but
Yes.
and then, but for us, you see, as a trust, we're wanting to bring catering in house, and part of that is cost saving and being able to bring the cost of meals down, because while School Grid is great and Dolce, provide a great service to schools. My daughter's school has Dolce and School Grid, but that's a separate app, and it's a separate add-on cost service that the school have to pay for. And as sort of costs increase for schools and budgets shrink and things like that, it's these little things. Whilst School Grid might be £1,000 or £2,000 a year, that's £1,000 or £2,000 that can be spent on other resources in schools. So whilst I get what they're saying in that it does everything and the parents like it, I know that you can set up meals in Arbor, you can do payments through Arbor, you can do all of that through Arbor. So these are sort of the conversations that I have to have with them, whereas others who've had parent pay per apps, their licenses have come up for renewal, and we've been able to sort of naturally just sort of end that and then move them over to Arbor. But then there's others where they're digging their heels in a little bit, and I suppose previously the schools have been able to go out and get their own and sort their own. There was no real direction from anyone. And then other schools would say, "Oh, I like that. We'll get that," and then and so on. And well, that's okay. But we do like it where we can just have one, and everyone's using the same system, and it just makes it easier for trust reporting, for pulling together information and presenting it rather than trying to get it out of different systems.
Yeah, it's always a difficult one convincing people that use a system day in, day out to look for change, especially where in their mind there's no need to. And as you say, those small savings do add up considerably, not least financially, but also in terms of user adoption. You're only going to want to log into one platform. If you have to log into one platform to see, attainment, assessment, achievement data, then contact the school and everything like that, and then you have to do another one to load 10 quid onto their parent pay account, and then you have to log on to another one to actually choose the meals that they want, and then another one to perhaps do your parents' evenings or whatever like that. As a parent, you're not going to be asked to do that at the end of the day, and it's never going to be a good system. So it's a really, I think, big challenge for us as professionals who can see the overall benefits, who can look and compare it to what they've got, to really try to get that change through when, as you say, people are wedded to the systems. And I think a lot of it is because they don't have the time to consider and then to actually live the change to a new system. They, in these smaller schools, they're so battle weary against everything that's being thrown at them at the moment. They don't, it's something that doesn't need to change in their eyes, and therefore they don't and won't change from it because of the amount of learning. But in reality, it can save a lot of work, and it can make life easier. Have you been in many situations where you've seen the feedback and they've gone, actually, you were right?
Yeah, I think so. Probably, because the two primaries that we sort of recently took over, again, as part of the change, we renew that when they become a new entity, they have to sign a brand new 3-year rolling contract with Sims. So we had to give them the choice and say, look, you can, if you want to, move to Sims and do another 3 years, or you can move to Arbor. Luckily, they chose to sort of move to Arbor, and I remember speaking to like the business manager or office manager at one of the schools, and she was very apprehensive. She'd just come back from maternity leave, and very, very much wedded to Sims, and obviously still trying to find her feet and get back into the role. And I think, again, it was like, right, okay, you've just come back, we've been took over by Endeavour Learning Trust, and you're losing Sims. It's all going to change. But I remember sort of sitting down with her on the first day and going through a few things in terms of reports and schedule reports, and they were using paper. So their registers were done on paper. So they were in Sims. They would print off every week all of the registers, put them in a black folder, deliver them to each of the classes. They would get marked by the teachers. They would come back, and then a member of staff would then key in those attendance and pretty much spend probably half a day or whatever keying in attendance. And I remember sort of some of the comments she made when we're showing them the live register, how the marks come through, how you can deal with the absences, how you can send messages to chase up parents. And it was like, oh my god, this is like life changing. And yeah, it was just.
It's always good feeling, isn't it, when you can
Yeah.
showcase that and people can see it. And I think it speaks a lot for people in your roles where you can gain that trust. Carrot and stick, I think, on some of these things. As a trust, you want them to do it, but you want them to do it because they can see the same benefits that you can, or in the longer term, and there has to be a bit of trust in that. So it really speaks volumes that they're able to see that because they've got people in a central team like yourself who's able to give that extra support, which they wouldn't necessarily get by themselves to achieve that. What do you think is next for data in education? You've now got these dashboards, you've got these systems like Arbor where you're able to get the data and for it to be context aware. Where do we go from here?
I think now it's a case of how we can provide sort of a complete picture of a student and how we pull that in, because we use different assessment systems to test children. I suppose if you think of GL assessments and CATs, and so that's a sort of that data's held in a sort of system. You've then got your main MIS suspensions, behaviour, attendance, data in one place. And then I suppose you've got CPOMs as well, so you might have a lot of safeguarding, a lot of anecdotal data. And for me, I want to be able to, and I'm hoping that other sort of schools feel this as well, is trying to produce complete sort of dashboards of students, or sort of a picture of a student of everything brought into one area. So if you wanted to sort of, instead of going into GL assessments and looking at what CAT score or what reading score they got, or going into CPOMs and having a look at the logs, I'd like it where we've just got it in one place. So I know for us, and this is something we'll look at probably as we grow and we get more schools, like a data warehouse, so where we can pull in information from one place where the data is just fed through pipelines or various different avenues into one central place. And that to me is definitely where we need to start looking. And as well, this is probably picking up on something Rob Wall on LinkedIn sort of speaks a lot about, is the role of the data person in school, and that sort of that project I've only sort of glanced at it a little bit, but just seeing how the different roles are categorised within sort of the sector, and how people can develop and improve the skills and things like that. So the two main things that I think I see it going is pulling data into sort of one central place for schools and trusts, and also the role as well in sort of developing skills around not just Power BI but probably SQL, Python, and people getting more upskilled, because we are dealing with much bigger data sets, and custom reports or reports designed in Sims won't really cut it. They've not got probably the capabilities of doing it. So it's about being able to model and join tables together and sort of bring that information data to life.
Excellent. Sounds like an exciting next few steps there. So at the end of each of our podcasts, we ask the guests to name something that they never want to see in education again from EdTech, and then something that they're really excited for the future. So I'm going to pose those questions to you now. What kind of thing that you've seen in your role or in the wider education world that you never want to see again?
Paper registers.
Yes.
Or just people doing things on. I know people laugh and they see people printing things, and yeah, I just think that is just a complete waste of time and resource and money of just printing something. I know it's something you can't beat a good old scribble a note down and stuff, but often gets left or discarded, thrown away and not used. So yeah, paper registers, people having to print off fire registers.
I always cringe when I go into a head teacher's office and I see that they've got data put up on there for all the kids, multiple pages, and I'm just like, not only is this a scary GDPR world that we're living in, but like that data's out of date.
Yeah,
If your data's only updated 3 times a year and you can replace your wall thing on there, then there's no point doing it. Just don't even bother, because it's not going to give you anything useful. What are you excited? I know we've spoken about a few things about development of the role, but what are you excited about really seeing next? Is it how you can handle those big data tranches, or is it something more specific in the nearer future?
there's probably two things. I'm always a big advocate of reducing workload for staff, and if we can do that, then to me that's sort of the job well done. In that, not only are we providing live dashboards, and it's about making tasks easy. So for me, if we can do anything that even saves someone 5 minutes, whether it be auto absence and picking up voicemails and transcribing those and suggesting codes, I think that's really innovative. But just anything really in terms of reports and things that, I don't know, I guess that those tasks that people are a bit fearful of or filled with dread that they've got to write, it's reports time, and I just hope that we can make it so it's just not as cumbersome. And then the other is what I've spoken about, which is sort of a data warehouse for our trust, but just make it easier, I suppose, because it is quite a unique skill set, and it probably people of data engineer level, real technical knowledge. And I know Star Academy, where I've come from, have recruited someone to that type of post who are literally just modelling and pulling through large sets of data ready for analysts who can then create the visuals and set all the dashboards up. So yeah, I think we're a bit off that yet because we're only a small trust in size, but my hope is that as we grow and we pull in more schools, more data sources, more things to sort of consider, then my hope is that a central sort of data warehouse will, I think my line manager, he's American, so he'll say like, Carl's data warehouse, and that's apologies for the poor American accent there, but he says that's how I see it, is Carl's data warehouse. So yeah, it's that's something that I'm excited for, but whether in terms of the industry or the sector, I think that's probably what more trusts are going to start looking towards, particularly as they grow as well.
Awesome. Well, that's been a really great insight to your role and that kind of development of that area in EdTech. And I hope it's brought the listeners a real insight to one of the many varied roles that is in there. And it will be really interesting to see the development of that role and that position as trusts grow and the need for data only increases. So really appreciate your insight there, Carl. So if people wanted to catch up with you, if there's anything that they've heard on this they would like to delve a bit better, is the best place to reach you out on LinkedIn?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I enjoy sort of connecting with people on there, and people have contacted me after I've sort of been with products and sort of just email me, and I'm happy to sort of chat, and because I do enjoy sort of listening to other people's perspectives on how they do things, and it's good. I think it's a bit of a unique bunch, I suppose, aren't we, data people? Not everybody sort of aspires to be data people, but it's always nice when you sort of get to talk to people who and that's why I enjoy going to Arbor Fest and things like that. It's nice to sort of sit with people who do the same role as well. So yeah, definitely LinkedIn would be fab. Yeah, it'd be great to connect.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Carl. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Matt. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.